When the original Gothic was released in 2001, I was in my final year of my teens before turning 20 in 2002. This game was developed in my home country Germany and became very popular at that time. Piranha Bytes, which was sadly closed just last year, produced 2 sequels as well as Elex 1 and 2. This piece of gaming history will continue its life in the form of a remake developed by Alchemia Interactive in 2026, 25 years after the original. Let's hope that the involvement of the Embracer Group does not bode as an ill omen, as it has for many innocent and now closed studios in the height of their buying spree. But we're here for benchmarks, not gaming history or industry drama. While the original Gothic from 2001 utilized a custom engine, a feature rarely seen nowadays, the remake employs the ever-popular Unreal Engine 5 to produce stunning visuals. And as expected, Gothic's medieval dark fantasy world has never looked so gorgeous. It wasn't without its flaws or quirks, but the first impression was strong. We must also consider that my impressions were based on an early demo. The final game is still months away and could change for even better or worse.
Still alive? Good. I'm Diego. I'm not. No one in here cares about your name.
The following table lists the hardware I tested with. Core isolation and memory integrity were disabled on Windows 11. I benchmarked 2 locations in the demo. The first was a long run from the gate entrance down to the cliffs, from where you can see the old camp and back. Because of its distance, I ran the route only twice. The second location was a small forest-like area that could be reached by climbing up the rocks next to the mines. It was the most system-taxing location in the game. Since it was relatively short, I ran 3 laps this time. I performed all tests at a native 1440p resolution. Once with the default anti-aliasing setting, which I assume is TAAU, and a second time with Unreal's TSR upscaler set to 100%, meaning native resolution. I benchmarked the medium, high and Gothic quality presets. I think those are the most relevant presets for the majority of people and hardware configurations, except Steam Decks and similar performers. The demo version only included Unreal Engine 5's TSR upscaling technology and nothing more, but as I've seen many times now, TSR is often the better choice compared to FSR3 or XESS on AMD GPUs. Alchemia Interactive even added a high quality upscaling option that sits between native rendering and the quality mode, which usually renders at a 66% scale. I found this to be the sweet spot for achieving good performance and a good visual presentation on the 9070 XT. Let's begin with the TAAU results, as this was the default setting when the game started. All quality settings delivered a very playable performance, even the Gothic preset. I say that because I assume that what Alchemia Interactive calls Gothic is labeled as epic in other UE5 games. This is usually at the edge of a 50 to 60 FPS experience in other Unreal 5 titles. This surprised me just as much as the fact that this is the first game I tested that ran measurably better on Linux than on Windows 11. On average, Bazzite 42 led Windows 11 by 7% and the 1% lows were 10% better on Linux. The forest area, which placed a heavier load on the system, saw Linux's advantage slip to around 6% on average and about 9% for the 1% low values. Compared to the long run, all presets lost nearly 10 frames per second on average, which is likely a more accurate representation of the expected worst-case scenario in the final game. But what happened when I engaged the TSR upscaler instead? TSR has cost more performance at the native resolution, but it was definitely worth it in my opinion. Engaging Epic's upscaler did cost about 10 frames per second, but the pecking order didn't change. Linux still led by 8% on average. In terms of FPS, this amounted to about 10 more frames on Bazzite using the Gothic preset. Linux's average advantage shrank using the lower quality presets, but the more critical 1% low values remained close to the 10% line or even exceeded it. Both systems moved closer together in the forest area. The higher the load was, the smaller the difference became. Bazzite 42 kept the lead, but it was at most 7% faster in the 1% lows. The averages were just over 4% better for Linux. But hey, a win's a win, even by the slimmest of margins. Please note that my results are only representative of AMD GPUs. Using an NVIDIA graphics card might produce wildly different numbers. Gothic's world was populated by 3 camps: the old camp, the new camp, and the swamp camp with people smoking weeds and admiring some form of god. In terms of operating systems, the old camp was represented by the long-entrenched Windows 11, the new camp was clearly Bazzite Linux, trying to steal Windows thunder, and the swamp people were the Apple fanboys blowing steam up their own butts. I'm not sure about the canon lore of Gothic, but in my benchmarks, the new camp clearly won the day. So if you're a Linux gamer and plan to enjoy this piece of gaming history, maybe you should give the new camp a shot in your playthrough. All jokes aside, I was so surprised by the results that I performed the tests multiple times just to be sure. I skipped the low preset because for my type of hardware, this was of no relevance, and it also looked bad. The highest end preset, Alchemia Overdose, was unplayable on the other hand. It dropped the frame rates below 30 FPS. To find out more, check out my gameplay performance video. It also contains an example of the TSR high quality upscaling option, demonstrating its positive impact on performance without any perceivable degradation in quality in my opinion. I recommend TSR over the default TAAU because TSR almost completely solved ghosting artifacts. Again, watch my previous video on the Gothic Remake to see for yourself. The TSR section is at the end and the timestamps in the video description will easily guide you there. That's all I have for you today. Please consider doing all the YouTube stuff. Thank you for watching.
But not that surprising.